Welcome everyone to Neverwinter on PC. My name is Rainer and today I will be talking about upcoming weapon and armor enchantment changes. What changed? If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you would like to see more information or videos about Neverwinter, hit the subscribe button. On preview we got a big patch with some changes to our weapon and armor enchantments. These enchantments are big investments in our character, so of course people are a bit edgy whenever these things change. In this video I will show you everything that changed for each one of the enchantments. First up are the weapon enchantments. Bilethorn. On live it looks like this. You at will encounter daily powers deal 5% bonus damage as poison damage, and target enemy takes 40 magnitude weapon damage as poison damage after 4 seconds. Target enemy movement speed is reduced by 7%. This effect stacks up to 3 times and lasts for 4 seconds. With the changes we went to this one, and first of all we're going through some generic changes. As you can see, the item level of rank 14 enchantments was 150 and that went up to 800. Increased item level can be good for some roles, it can also be bad sometimes, so they are actually very potent, so I do understand why they get more item level. But yeah, it's a big update there. So we got more item level. I think we can get up to 55,000 now. Another generic change is that before we got 5% bonus damage on our rank 14s, and that was a generic thing for all of them, and now it goes up to 8%. Other than that, the magnitude of this Bilethorn, that's a special thing for this enchantment. It was 40 magnitude and now it's 60 magnitude. So Bilethorn actually got a small buff. Then we get to Bronzewood. Bronzewood looks like this. I'm not gonna read them all, but it looks like this. And on preview we got back this one. Bronzewood got a small nerf. It used to debuff enemies for 10% more damage, and now it's 6% more damage, and the minus 3000 deflection has been removed. So yeah, overall a small nerf, apart from the generic change of course. Then we get to Dread. This is the old one, magnitude 10 weapon damage and a defense debuff of 3%. The magnitude damage has been decreased by 2. I don't think it matters too much. And the defense debuff went from minus 3000 to minus 4%, so we're getting percentages here, which is of course more useful. But this of course also represents 3%, and this is 4%. So in general, this is a small buff for Dread. Then we get to the Fate Touched. Fate Touched, the old one to the left and the new one on the right. Overall, Fate Touched has been nerfed a bit. Target damage dealt was minus 10%, and in the new version it's minus 2%. And the deflect debuff went from minus 3000 to minus 2% deflect. However, there was a cooldown. It may only happen once every 30 seconds, and this cooldown is now removed. So the minus 2% deflect, I guess this will be on there all the time. Then we get to the Flaming weapon enchantment. Flaming got a small buff. The burn magnitude was 2.5, went to 24. The burn debuff went from minus 1000 critical avoidance, which NPCs don't have, to minus 4% deflect severity. And deflect severity of course is countered by accuracy, so if you have accuracy capped, this of course doesn't do anything anymore. The stacking of this debuff has been removed. It's stacked up 3 times and that's not here anymore. So you get this 1 time. Then in the bottom, you also have here when you attack 3 times, or when you get 3 stacks, so you do 3 attacks, you at will cause the target to explode magnitude 75 weapon damage as fire damage, with a cooldown of 20 seconds. And here you have a 50% chance, so basically every second at will encounter on daily power will cause the target to explode, dealing magnitude 60 weapon damage. I don't know why there's still weapon damage here. I think this should be removed. So the magnitude went down a little bit. However, the chance went up. Well, it wasn't a chance before it was stacks, but this is basically one every second stack. And then they also reduced the cooldown from 20 to 10 seconds. So overall, I would say this is a buffed weapon enchantment. Then we get to the Frost enchantment. This is how it looked. And this is how it's going to look in the new version. Basically, the 15% recharge speed reduction has been removed. And we got for that a -4% defense reduction, which is quite good. There's not that many ways to remove defense from the enemy. We don't have arm penetration anymore. So any defense reduction is really good. So Frost also got a buff. Then the Holy Avenger also got a buff, in my opinion. So we got the defense buff was 15,000 and it went to 3%. Now you might say, whoa, this is not a buff, but 15,000 of course. One, it's ratings, and second, this is never going to stay in the new system because 15,000 is like 1/3 of your caps. So it would never stay that way. 3% is pretty good. And then we also have the heal on here, which used to be 50 magnitude and now it's 60 magnitude. Overall, I would see this as a small buff because I don't really think this was realistic in the new system. Then we go to Life Drinker. Life Drinker got some changes in the lifesteal chance. It used to increase lifesteal chance by 5%, so all of your attacks would all of a sudden have some chance of life stealing. And then it would increase by 5%, so this was 10% always, I guess. But yeah, and then you got lifesteal based on your hit. And now you have, it's gotten much easier, ignore the typo here, but now we got 10% chance to gain a fixed magnitude damage hit points. And 120 is not that bad. So I would say Life Drinker got a small buff. Especially also because of the cooldown reduction on here. I almost forgot about that. So in the past, this increase of lifesteal chance only could happen once every 20 seconds. So you had 5% half of the time and 10% the other half of the time. And now you always have 10% chance to get hit points back. Then Lightning. A lot of people use Lightning for AoE. Lightning, the old one, the new one, basically went up. It's almost the same one, but the 50 magnitude went to 60 here, so it also has received a small buff, to the rejoice of all the people using this. I know a lot of people have one of these. Then Plague Fire. This is the old one, a lot of text, and then the new one. I would say that for PvE, Plague Fire got a small nerf, and for PvP it might be a small buff. So what changed here? The burn magnitude went from 2.5 to 8 magnitude. It's both very low. Then burning foes receive -1000 critical avoidance went into -1.5% critical avoidance. For PvE, critical avoidance is not really useful because NPCs do not have critical avoidance. So that's why I say for PvE it's a nerf, because you cannot make use of this. And then at the bottom, you have the stacks, almost the same, except for the magnitude 150 that was here. It changed to magnitude 120, and we also have weapon damage here. That should be removed. Then, prominence. Prominence, in my eyes, got a tiny buff. The prominent damage magnitude, let me find it. Here it's 30. Deal magnitude 30 weapon damage, and here it went to deal magnitude 32 damage. So that's a small buff, otherwise it's all the same. Then we go to terror. Terror not very useful in before the changes anyway. It got a buff, so it went from a debuff on a daily of minus 3000 awareness for 10 seconds to a debuff of minus 4% combat advantage for 10 seconds on a daily bar. The awareness, of course, very useless because enemies do not have awareness. NPCs at least do not have awareness in Neverwinter, at least with an on preview. And the combat advantage is instead actually what is doing here. So combat advantage damage will go down. Also the root chance, your daily powers have a 12% chance to root the target for 3 seconds, and that went up to 30%. So that's the other part of the buff. Then we get the Vorpal. A lot of people will have one of these. I am a little... on first glance you would say this is a nerf. What changed? Well, in the new version we get 4% critical strike, and basically on a daily hit we get 2% combat advantage for 10 seconds. So on a ranger, for example, you do dailies all the time, so you have always 2% combat advantage. The big thing that makes this hinting towards a nerf is the critical severity that has been increased by 20%, which has been removed, of course. So we don't get critical severity anymore from Vorpal. There was a bit of confusion on preview whether this 20% should actually go over the 90% cap. I'm pretty sure it wasn't intended. It did though. Why am I not sure whether this is a nerf? Well, the critical severity 20% is actually not really needed anymore in the new system, because you're almost always going to be at the critical severity cap. It's very easy to reach 90% critical severity. So removing this, does it really matter that much? I think the critical strike does a lot more for us, and the combat advantage as well. So Vorpal, I guess for some classes it might be a nerf, maybe for healers, for example, because they do not very easily cap critical severity. But for DPS, I'm not sure. Alright, that was all the weapon enchantments. Let's go on to the armor enchantments. For the armor enchantments, basically the same generic increase of item level. It went from 150 to 800. Of course, there's no damage on armor enchantments, so that did not change. Then first of all, bark shield. To the left is the old bark shield, and to the right is the new bark shield. As you can see, the stacks, the first 3 stacks have been increased a little bit, and the last stack has been increased by a lot, really a lot. So this is quite a big buff, and I know that a lot of people who did the trials were using bark shield, and this definitely looks like we're going to still use them. I don't know if this is a bug, whether this 2 is correct here. I don't know. This is a little bit... I'm very surprised about this, that it's so high, because yeah, that's really a lot. Then blood theft. Blood theft, to the left is the old one, to the right is the new one. No change. It stayed exactly the same. Briar Twine got a small buff. Instead of 5% damage dealt back, you now do 6% damage dealt back, and also the 9% chance to root is now a 10% chance to root. Then we get to Eclipse. Eclipse got a pretty sizable buff, in my opinion. In the old one, It increased deflection rating by 3000, which is basically plus 3%. In the new version, it increases deflect by 8%, so that's 5% extra. The rest of this thing is still the same. Then Elven Battle, the old one, the new one, nothing changed. Fireburst, to the left the old one, to the right the new one. In my opinion, a small buff. First up, the fireball magnitude went up from 100 to 120. The resistances, when you get critically struck, you generate flames, increased by 5%, went to 5.3, which is a very odd number for a maximized enchantment, but okay. And then the secondary fireball magnitude went from 75 to 3.6. I don't know if this is an intentional value or this seems very low, but overall I think the first proc is the most important one, and that's why I would say this is a tiny buff. Then we get the Frostburn. Frostburn also got a buff. So the chance here went down from 10.5 to 10%, which is a very tiny decrease. But when you get that chance, you apply the 30% slow and minus 3000 critical strike on the old version, and now it's minus 8%. So it's minus 5% extra critically strike debuff on the target. Then we get to Lone Weave. Lone Weave got actually a pretty big buff. When you receive damage, you have a 10% chance to deal magnitude 75 weapon damage as physical damage back to the attacker. And that went up to actually 240 magnitude damage as physical attack. Otherwise, it was completely the same as before. So it does have a chance, so it's not guaranteed. But yeah, the magnitude went up quite a bit. Then Negation, the old one, new one, nothing changed. Shadowglad, to the left the old one, to the right the new one. So the stacks, in the old one we got 18% deflection rating per stack, which was quite big in my eyes anyway, but they removed the one, and now it's only 8% deflection, which is quite a big nerf there. Also the duration was 8 seconds, and now it's 6 seconds, and they changed the writing here. Instead of it's mentioning a 4% increase of your damage resistance, it says a 4% increase of your defense for 6 seconds. So yeah, the duration is also nerfed a little bit, but yeah, this is the biggest part of the nerf on this Shadowglad enchantment. Then we get the Soulforge. Soulforge got a buff actually. So in the old one, when you resurrected, you had 7500 plus 2500 every second for 3 seconds hit points. In total, it would heal you for 15,000, which is quite low. This was the weird part of this enchantment. The heal was super low, and that's why you were just as well running a rank 7 or 8 of this enchantment, because it basically does the same. In the new version, you get 40,000 plus 3 times 13,333, so in total 80,000 hit points from this thing. The other part on here is when you're resurrected, you gain 3 seconds of control immunity and deal 40% weapon damage as fire damage to foes nearby. In the new version, it says also 3 seconds of control immunity and deal 213 damage as fire damage to foes nearby. I'm guessing this is probably either a bug or it doesn't even work this way, and it's just a tooltip error. And then we get to the Thunderhead enchantment. Thunderhead got a small buff in my eyes. So in the old one, you had a 10% chance to deal magnitude 150 lightning damage, and in the new one, it's 160 lightning damage to that foe. So that's a small buff. So conclusions. It's never nice when these things change. they are big investments. Like I'm already mentioned, they're big investments, and it's not nice if the thing that you invested heavily on all of a sudden is not best in slot anymore. Are enchantments completely dead because of these changes? I don't think so. I don't think there are any enchantments that were very heavily used that are absolutely unusable right now. Even the Vorpal that I showed you, I think the changes are not that dramatic. People make them out to be very dramatic, but in my eyes they're actually not that bad. Of course you get a lot less stats, but you get better stats, and that also counts for something. But most of these changes in my eyes were just necessary because of the new system. Some things just don't make sense anymore in the new system because the NPC stats are just not there anymore, or they work completely different. So let me know what you think of these changes in the comments below, and I'll make sure to respond to them as much as I can. And if you have any other remarks on this video or any suggestions on what to investigate next, feel free to also leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.